All right, shalom, shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem, Wakal Kodash. I want to say and give double honors to the apostles and the bishop elders at Great Millstone for teaching us this word and truth and sincerity for ruling well. And salutations to my fellow Akim, the hopeful 144,000, the elect of Israel. Hey, I'm my brother Gabar Yahweh from GMS Hawaii, coming to you with another quick lesson. And this lesson was inspired by this article that you see right here in front of you. It's from Telegraph, and it's entitled "Netflix in Race Row for Casting Denzel Washington. Streaming giant accused of placing Afrocentric slant on history by giving role of a young pale-skinned leader to veteran actor." And this is to show you that, none of these nations want us to be great. None of these nations want the Israelites to be a people that's renowned or reckoned amongst the nations, right? Even in history. Let the so-called white man tell you everybody that was ever great in history looked like him. I'll give you a prime example. When you look up, Slocky. When you look up, I just typed in General Hannibal Barca, right? Which this is who Denzel Washington is supposed to play. He wasn't a so-called white man, all right? But let Esau tell it, he was a so-called white man. And these other nations, if you're not pale, if you don't look like a so-called white man, and you're not great, right? So if they'd have had, I don't know, Russell Crowe play General Hannibal Barker, that would have been a slap in everybody's face, because we know that he wasn't a so-called white man, and we know he wasn't a so-called Arab. He was he was a Hebrew Israelite, okay, living in Carthage, which we're gonna go into. Carthage used to be. It was run by the Phoenicians, the Philistines, all right, and it was like a annexation from them people. But you had a lot of Israelites in northeast, and West Africa. We had a lot of Israelites. We had a lot of strongholds, and a great stronghold was in Egypt as well as Carthage. And Leo Scipio Africanus, the one who defeated Hannibal Barca, he was a so-called white man. But see, these nations, they don't want you to be, especially the so-called Negro, they don't want you to be put in these roles of greatness. They want to see you as a low estate. You could play a drug dealer, you could play a slave, you could play a pimp, you can play a gangster, a killer, a murderer, but you cannot play nobody great. And then these people that's living in Tunisia today, they're not even original people. Like, I typed in the average Tunisian family, right? This is the average Tunisian family. Yep, it says the average Tunisian family, and look what you get. You get a bunch of Arabs, you get a bunch of so-called white-looking people, right? And this is who they want you to believe that Hannibal Barca were these people, and these people are nothing more than children of invaders, all right? And Tunisia was ancient Carthage, all right? And you can see how close it is to the Mediterranean, right? This was ancient Carthage, Carthaginian, but it was changed to Tunisia, all right? And these people, these so-called Arabs, none of these people are great. None of these people are wartime strategists. None of these people are had the gall to fight against the Romans, and when they were coming up into power, man, right? But let these people tell you, they want you to believe that Hannibal Barca looked like this, and he didn't. He wasn't a so-called white man. He wasn't an Arab, all right? But yet these people, they get angry that Denzel Washington playing a role. Here it is. Esau been taking the likeness and making it his own of everybody that was ever great in society, even the Most High, even the Heavenly Father and His Son. Real quick, this is and that's all part of his deception. They want to Edomitize or so-called whitenize or use white supremacy to make everybody in the world a so-called white man, right? That's to make you think that these people were great. This is Job 9:24. It says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he, man? And we know that the so-called white man is the wicked, all right? And he used a lot of deception, because a lot of the people that you think are white, a lot of these great people that you think are so-called white people, all right, or really so-called black people. A lot of great men and women, but because of iconoclasm, because of the whitewashing, which now when you get a Jake to play one of these roles who they believe is traditional white, they call it blackwashing. No, that's all confusion, right? And like I said, there was no problem when the white man was doing this, but now you see Jake being put in these roles. And Hannibal Barca was a so-called black man. He was not a so-called white man. So it says Netflix in a race role for casting Denzel Washington as Hannibal, streaming giant accused of placing Afrocentric slant on on history by giving role of a young pale-skinned leader to the veteran black actor, which they don't even know what Hannibal Barca really looked like. So for them to even say that he was pale-skinned, that's an assumption in itself, right? That's an assumption in itself. All right. It says Tunisians have accused Netflix of stealing their history, which is not your history. That the history of ancient Carthage, first of all, Carthage was razed to the ground by the Romans. They destroyed that place after Hannibal Barca lost those wars. I mean, lost the war, the last war. I think it was like the Second Punic War, might have been the third, but I forget how many wars they had, but they had a bunch of them. And when Hannibal Barca lost, that country was destroyed by Leo Scipio Africanus. All right, so this is not, you modern people that's living in Tunisia today, this is not your history. Tunisians have accused Netflix of stealing their history by casting Denzel Washington as General Hannibal in an upcoming film about the military leader who almost toppled Rome. They say Hannibal, who famously marched elephants over the Alps with his infantry and cavalry, was a Carthaginian of Phoenician background, which we know that the Phoenicians, who they also come from the Philistines. That's where you get that word. Phoenician is Greek for Philistine. They were Hamites, man. Right? Was a Carthaginian Phoenician background, meaning he was most likely pale skinned. That's a lie. That's a lie. Look, you type in the ancient, and again, you're gonna get a whitewash version of it. Ancient Phoenicians. I know I'm spelling it wrong. Just bear with me. Phoenicians. Ancient Phoenicians, right? We know that Phoenicia, let's read this real quick. Because they don't want Jake to be shit except low level. Phoenicia was an ancient Semitic thalocrastic civilization, which they weren't Semitic, they were Hamitic, the Philistines. The territory of Phoenicia extended in strength throughout history, with the core of their culture stretching from Awar, modern Syria, to Mount Carmel, modern Israel. Beyond their homeland, Phoenicians extended throughout the Mediterranean from Cyprus to the Iberian Peninsula. The Phoenicians were a Semitic-speaking people. They spoke Hebrew. They spoke what you call Phoenician. But they weren't the only ones speaking that language. The Hebrew Israelites spoke that language, who emerged in the Levant in 3000 BC. The name Phoenicia is an ancient Greek exonym, I told you, and that did not correspond precisely to the cohesive culture or society as it would have been understood natively. It is debated whether Phoenicians were actually distinct from the broader group of Semitic-speaking peoples known as the Canaanites, which they spoke Semitic, but they were Hamites. The Phoenicians were Hamites. Let me get that real quick. The sons of Ham. Let's get that. Because again, they don't want you to be nothing. You know, they don't want Jake to be anything. The only time we came on the scene is when we were slaves and being killed and destroyed by other nations. We just magically appeared as slaves on the earth, or nobodies, or no people, according to them. But we have a lot of great history, even up to the most recent times. All right. Um, um, right here, Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. Right. It says, "And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan," which Cush would be the so-called Ethiopians today. Mizraim would not the Egyptians today, but those are the people that dwelt in ancient Egypt, right? It says Phut and Canaan, right? and a foot is like Libya, and Canaan is modern day Israel. And the sons of Cush, Seba, Havil, Sabath, Ramah, Sabatka, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He became a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shah. Wherefore it was said, even Nimrod, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of the kingdom of Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calah, and Shinar. And out of the land, a fourth of Ashur builded Nineveh, here it is. I just want to skip down. Verse 13. And Mizraim begat Ludium, and Anam, and Lahabim, and Nephim, and Pathasarium, and Caslim, out of whom came Philistim, right? And Captorim, right? So we know that the Philistines, they come out of Philistin, right? We know that for a fact. So it's right here, Philistim in the Hebrew, the word for Philistim is Palashatya, which is inhabitants of Philistia, descendants of Mizraim, who immigrated from Kappor. So the ancient Philistines they came out of Montezarium, which you would call Egypt today, and they weren't Arabs. We're gonna get into that because these Arabs, they like to cling on to so-called African history, which that's not African, they're Hamitic. They want to cling on to this Hamitic history because they living in the land, just like they did in our land in Israel. They want to cling on to the land and ownership, but they don't belong in there. Them people got in that land through something called the Arab invasion, right? I typed in, when did Arabs come to Tunisia? Following, right? When did Arabs come to Tunisia? Following the decline of Rome, the region was ruled briefly by the Vandals and then the Byzantines, which this is Israelites, right? Before being conquered by the Arabs in 647 CE. So the Arab invasion, the Arab conquest, it took over the known world. Let me see this. Right? The Arab conquest, right? Or the early Muslim conquest. When you look on a map, these are the places that it took over. And these are the places that these people are at primarily, even to this day. Even to this very day. It's not big enough, but let me click on this and see if it'll come up. And I'll get back to the article, but even modern Tunisia is right here. You got Libya, you got Egypt, you got Northwest Africa, even the Iberian Peninsula, which was taken over by Israelites who were following Islam. All right, but these are the areas that it conquered, and a lot of these places where Arabs stay at to this day, because they're not originally from Iraq, they're not originally from this portion of the Middle East. Well, they are. Well, they're not originally from Iraq. They're not originally from Hamland, because this Ishmael's sons dwelt in these lands right here. They were basically nomadic people anyway. But when they took over, they, just like Esau, when Esau takes over, he takes the people's culture. He takes their nationality unto himself as if it belonged unto him, and it doesn't. It says the expansion of under the Muhammad, 622 to 632, expansion during the Rashid Caliphate, 632 to 661, expansion during the Umayyad Caliphate, 661 and 750. So it says right here, Salakia. Did I change it? Right here, 647. So this was during the time of the Arab invasion. That's how you people got to Tunisia. So but again, Hannibal Barca was way before that. And then they taking that history because he was famous unto themselves. Like, and he wasn't Tunisian. He was Carthaginian. And he was an Israelite, following in them customs. And you had Israelites all up and down Carthage. Tunisia have accused Netflix of stealing their history by casting Denzel Washington as General Hannibal in an upcoming film about the military leader who almost toppled Rome. They say Hannibal, who famously marched elephants over the Alps with his infantry and cavalry, was a Carthaginian of Phoenician, which we told you, Phoenicians and Hamites background, which he wasn't a Hamite. He was an Israelite living in Hamite land, meaning he was most likely pale skinned. And that's not true. Some Tunisians have also complained that Washington, the star of Malcolm X and Macbeth, is too old for the role. The Oscar-winning actor is 68, whereas Hannibal was in his late 20s when he invaded Italy during the Second Punic War in the 3rd century BC. Washington's casting in the film, which is due to start filming next year, was announced by Netflix. The streaming giant said he was preparing to take the part of one of the greatest military leaders in recorded history. But Yassin Mami, a minister of parliament, raised the issue to Tunisia's parliament, saying that there was a risk of falsifying history. Well, that's all you Edomites and you nations have done was falsify history, right? I'm gonna type something else up real quick. Jewish strongholds Africa. I should have typed Jewish communities in Africa. Yeah, look at this. Hey, Tawadi Habashi Shai, man. If brothers don't know, man, I love the research. And I love when things line up, right? So it says remnants of long-standing Jewish communities remain in Morocco, Tunisia, which we're talking about right now, and Spanish cities of Ceuta and Melilla, right? So you had Jews, and why did you have Jews in Africa? Because you had Israelites escaping there. We could hide there amongst them Hamites, man. It says the most ancient communities of African Jews. Listen to this. African Jews are the Ethiopians, West African Jews, who we come from, Safari Jews, Mazari Jews, North Africa, right? It says you had another stronghold in Alexandria, Egypt. You had a bunch of Israelites, huge Israelite community. In fact, Yahweh Shai went there to hide amongst them, the Jews there living in Hamland, because he could fit in. His father and his mother could blend in. No pale-skinned man can blend into all of this. But yet these people, they want to take history as if it belongs unto them, and it doesn't. And all it takes is a Google search, and you can read it. All right? Yeah, the dude might have died when he was young, but it doesn't take the fact that he was an Israelite, bro. And it's going to be good to see this dude take on the role of Hannibal Barca, man. You know? But again, these nations, they don't want us to be great at all. They just want us to be low. They just want us to be forgotten. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. Right? These nations, they hate the Lord. They hate Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. They hate his people. We represent the Lord. They hate us. It says, don't you hear the uproar of your enemies? Don't you see that your arrogant enemies are rising up? They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Right. They took real crafty counsel against us, and we were hidden in plain sight. It says they devise crafty schemes against your people. They conspire against your precious ones. Right. A crafty scheme is making ancient important figures who were Israelites, who were dark-skinned Israelites, dark brown-skinned Israelites, into white people, or to some so-called Arab-looking people. All right? But you got Israelites scattered still there to this day. But those that benefit from the land are not Israelites. All right? They're the heathens. And that's part of their crafty counsel, is to basically erase us from the history, which the Lord did that. You know, all the greatness that we had in the past, in the ancient world, that was all forgotten because of our iniquity, right? But then these nations, they jump on top of it and further that, you know. This is Isaiah 3:1. For behold, the Lord, behold, the Lord Yahweh of hosts doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff of the whole stay of bread, the whole stay of water, the mighty man and a man of war. And Hannibal Barca was a man of war, the judge and the prophet, and the prudent, and the ancient, and the captain of 50, and the honorable man, and the counselor, and the cunning artificer, and the eloquent orator. And I will give children to be their oppressors. Who are these children? These the so-called white men. Chiefly him, right? And they have been our oppressors. And babes shall rule over them, man. And that's what's happening. All right? Here it is. You know, when you look at people in the Middle Ages, and I've done videos after videos on this, really people look at them, but those that look at them, I hope you get edification from it. There's a lot of great people in history, people that you don't even know, that were really Israelites. And they were described in books and ancient writings as so-called black people. But when you type them up on Google, they're all white people. Just like when you type up Hannibal Barca, somehow, some way, magically, he became a so-called white man. You know? This is supposed to be a great African, so-called African leader. It wasn't two white people fighting each other in them Punic wars. Man. Hannibal Barca was a great man. Look, and then he spoke Hebrew, man. They call it Phoenician, but this is Hebrew, man. You know, Hanan, Baal, native name, Hannibal, Hannabaal. And that's a Hebrew name. Hannibal is a Hebrew name, right? It says the wars he fought in were the Roman Seleucid Wars, the Bithynian War, was wars from the barricade of conquest of Hispania, Second Punic War. Right, I had it right. He did fight in the Punic War. So the Second Punic War and Roman Seleucid War. So he was fighting against them Greeks. He was fighting against them Greeks. He was fighting against them Edomites. Right? But somehow, some way, he became this. When you see pictures of him or statues of him, they make him a so-called white man or look like a so-called Arab. And he wasn't. He didn't look like this. And a lot of these coins that you see, these are fabrications, because I've seen a coin like this before, and it had a black dude on it. He had a beard, and his hair was wool, man. They'll tell you, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just making this up. And it wasn't even no fucking Arabs in the land back then. These Arabs didn't live in the land back then. All right? Mauritania, Numidia, right? See? They make him a so-called, because they don't want Jake to have no greatness. Here it is, even to this very day, military experts and geniuses and leaders take notes out of his book. He had that beard on his face because he was a Jake. And he had woolly hair. He didn't have no soft, look, man, why is this image changing? He go from this, a guy with a beard, he goes to some Arab-looking nigga with a beard, right, and smooth hair, to this. This is called whitewashing. Because nobody knows, this could be anybody, but they're going to say this is Hannibal Barca. Or the Scipio Africanus, Salakia. This is Scipio Africanus, man. Yeah, like great people, they always whitewash people. Look, they make them white. They make them look like an Edomite. But yet in the back, you got dark-skinned people, man. Get the fuck out of here, man. Come on, son. Come on, son. And they try to make them, this would be nice if it was really depicted how he looked. You know? So, anyway, but this is all a part of that. This is all a part of that crafty counsel. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. When you hear the name Israel, you don't hear Yasha Allah, but you definitely don't hear us as a nation together, all 12 tribes, right? And even when we fell away from our nationality and we picked up the heathens' culture and we went into these different lands and ruled on our own, we don't get no respect for that. That's all hidden history. That's all a part of that crafty counsel that what we mean from us being made a nation anymore. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee, which all these nations are confederate against us, and you're going to see Ishmael is one of them. We get on Edom, because he's the number one demon. But the tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, and Ishmael supposed to be our cousins. You know what I'm saying? We got the same father, our grandfather. But this devil, this demon, all right, this Ishmaelite, this sand nigga, he covering us up too. Just like when you go to Egypt today, what do you see? Arabs over there. And they cling on to that ancient Egyptian history. It don't belong to them. It don't belong to them. Let's go back to this. In 218 BC, Hannibal attacked Sagno, modern Sagunto, Spain, an ally of Rome and Hispania, sparking the Second Punic War. Hannibal invaded Italy by crossing the Alps with North African war elephants. In his first few years in Italy, he won successions of victories at the Battle of Trebia, Lake Trasmene, and Cannae. Yeah. So, again, these pictures that they show, a lot of these pictures they were brought up after the fact, after he was gone. This is a quarter shekel of Carthage, perhaps minted in Spain, perhaps. The observers depict Hannibal with traits of a young Melkart. Melkart was the tutelary god of the Phoenician city-state of Tyre and a major deity of the Phoenicians and Punic pantheons. He may have been central to the founding myths of various Phoenician colonies. Man. So you don't even know if this is Hannibal or not. This is anybody. The reverse feature is one of his famous war elephants, man. Yeah, and Hannibal ain't the first one to use war elephants either. Them Persians used them war elephants too. You know, that's another story for another time. This is Numbers 23 and 9. For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I beheld, and lo, the people, which is Israel, shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. Man, let's see that word for reckon, because we're not reckoned amongst these nations. Right? The Hebrew word for reckon is hashab. It is this dude had a Hebrew name and everything, which his last name Barca or Barak, which means lightning or blessed. Right? Hashab, it says to esteem. It's to think, to plan, to esteem, to think account. Right? So these people don't show any account of us. We are nobody, like the scripture says, and according to them, we're nobodies. The book of what is it? Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5. Right? 5 and 1. It says, "Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as has afflicted, and made no account of his labors." Right, which these nations, they don't make no account of our labors. Again, to them we're nothing. To them, we were just here. Until they came and took us over in the Americas, till they came and took us from so-called West Africa, which they took us from more than extra Africa. They took us from Europe, Africa too. You know what I mean? And wherever else they can take. And they took us across the world. You got Israelites in Iraq right now to this day. And I remember seeing some when I was in the army. After my first tour, we were leaving Iraq. We were driving out. We were going past, I forget his name, Basra. I wouldn't call it Basra, but it's southern Iraq. And that's where they keep most of the so-called black people that down there. You know what I mean? Which a lot of them were children, remnants of children who were brought over there in captivity during the East Asian slave trade, the East Indian slave trade. And that's why you Edomites, you're going to pay too for what you did to our people. Because y'all don't make no account of our labors. But that's just a part of the world deception that Esau has used against us and still do till this day. Revelation 20 and 7. And when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. Right? And that happened during the Renaissance period, and we still living in that short time. And shall go out to deceive the nations. So he lied to the nations, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather together them to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. Which they're gonna battle. They're gonna try to battle the Hawashai, the angels, and us. You know, when he comes back, he will go out and deceive the nations. Right, and that's what this devil has done. All these nations are in great deception of ancient historic figures like Hannibal Barca, Queen Elizabeth, a lot of people, King Charles the First, Second, Third, all the real ones know that these people were so-called black people, right? Not saying that these other nations didn't have mighty people in their nation, they did, but let's keep it a beam. Hannibal Barca was a so-called black man. Though he wasn't no looking, pale skinned individual, man, and he wasn't no Arab, because the Arabs ain't get there till late. All right, they were walking around bathing in camel piss when we were cleaning and anointing ourselves with oil, man. You know, hey, so down, say shalom on to the next.